Hiring a Filipino executive assistant can be a very good business decision, but Filipino is not a skill set, and lower cost is not a complete hiring strategy. Filipino EAs don't have all the same experience, communication style, schedule preferences, career goals, and level of judgment. So your job is not to find someone who matches a stereotype. It is to find the right individual, create fair working conditions, and give them enough context and authority to support you properly. These are 8 factors I would consider before hiring. The first factor is the role itself. Choosing the Philippines does not solve an unclear job description. Before you review the candidates, define what main problem they would solve, the responsibilities they should own, the level of judgment required, the hours, the flexibility, and what should be outside the scope of the role. Maybe you need an administrative support for defined scheduling, research, file organization. Maybe you need an executive support for calendar management, travel arrangement, meeting preparation, and stakeholder communication. Those are different roles. And be careful if your job description includes executive support, sales, bookkeeping, customer service, content, recruitment, and operations while treating every item as top priority. Don't start by asking, what can I outsource to the Philippines? Ask, what responsibilities does my business need someone to own? The second factor is the evidence that this particular person can do the work. Don't replace a proper assessment with a general belief about Filipino workers. Ask what the candidate personally owned on previous roles, what decisions they were trusted to make, how they handled conflicting priorities, what they did after making a mistake, how they communicated the risk, and what processes they improved. Then use realistic scenarios. Ask them what they'll do when they see calendar conflict, an incomplete instruction, if they miss the deadline, if they get a suspicious request for confidential information. Listen to the reasoning. Knowing Google Calendar or project management tool may be necessary, but tool knowledge does not automatically prove good judgment, and confidence during an interview doesn't automatically prove competence. Ask the same questions you would ask when hiring anywhere else. What evidence shows that this person can carry the responsibility safely? The third factor is communication. But don't evaluate it whether the candidate can speak English. Assess whether they can understand the outcome behind the request. Ask focused questions, write clear updates, raise a delay early, separate facts from assumptions, and recommend a next step. Suppose the executive says, the client hasn't replied. Can you handle it? A weak update would be, I sent a follow-up email. Still no response. A stronger update would be, the client hasn't responded to the email I sent on Monday and Wednesday. Their approval is required by Friday. I recommend calling the operations contact tomorrow morning if there's no reply today. The second update gives you context, timing, and the next action. That matters more than whether someone sounds American, British, Australian, or any other particular way. Don't assess whether the person sounds like you. Assess whether their communication helps the work move. The fourth factor is working style. Cross-cultural team may interpret respect, disagreement, urgency, and feedback differently. But don't assume you know how the candidate will behave just because they're Filipino. Ask the individual. How do they prefer to receive feedback? What do they do when they disagree with a decision? When would they interrupt the executive? How do they respond when the instructions are incomplete? What helps them raise a concern early? And you should assess your own behaviors too. Maybe you tell the EA, let me know when something goes wrong. But when they raise a concern, you become impatient. They learn very quickly that silence feels safer. You may later complain that they never speak up, or you may interpret respectful wording as uncertainty, while the EA interpret your very direct communication as anger. Neither problem is solved by telling the other person to communicate better. You need to discuss what clear, respectful communication looks like for both of you. If you want an EA who raises risk early, pay attention to how you respond when they bring you information you don't like. The fifth factor is time zone alignment. A candidate being willing to work overnight does not automatically mean overnight work is sustainable. Clarify which hours require real-time availability, which can be handled asynchronously, what counts as an emergency, whether weekend coverage is required, how holidays will work, and whether schedule changes when you travel across the country. Our role may be advertised as flexible, but if the executive expects immediate responses across a 12-hour period, frequent evening calls, and weekend availability, that arrangement is clearly not flexible. It's simply undefined. Ask yourself honestly whether you really need real-time support. Maybe you and the EA need 3 or 4 hours of live overlap. The rest can be handled through written updates and clear decision rules. Availability is part of the job design. It should not be tested by seeing how much inconvenience a candidate is willing to accept. The sixth factor is how the candidate will be hired and compensated. Remote is a location. It is not an employment classification. The EA may be employed through a Philippine company or have a contract directly with you as an independent contractor. Those structures create different responsibilities. Who signs the agreement? Who pays the EA? Who handles payroll or invoicing? Who manages tax and contribution arrangements? Is paid leave included? Are hours guaranteed? Who provides the equipment? What notice is required? And what happens if the relationship ends? Don't assume that calling someone a contractor resolves every legal or administrative issue. Use qualified professional advice for the arrangement you're creating. Then compare the complete compensation, not only the hourly or monthly rate. Include leave, equipment, payment fees, overtime, health coverage, internet and backup, currency risk, and stability. Fair compensation is not the lowest amount someone will accept. It should reflect the responsibility, working conditions, risk, and full arrangement. The seventh factor is security and continuity. An EA may have access to your calendar, email, travel information, client records, financial documents, and confidential conversations. So please be careful. It's not a security process. Decide whether the company will provide the device. Use a password manager, require multi-factor authentication, limit access based on role. Define how sensitive information should be shared, and explains what happened after a suspicious message or data exposure, or possible data exposure. The EA should know who to contact immediately. You also need a continuity plan. What happens during an internet or power interruption? Which responsibilities require immediate backup? And how will the EA notify you? Is important work documented? And can the person take leave without the entire relationship stopping? Do not assume the EA should personally fund every part of your company's security and continuity plan. Decide which equipment, software, and backup cost belongs to the business. Security needs clear systems, limited access, and fast reporting. The eighth factor is what happens after the person is hired. A capable EA can still struggle inside weak onboarding and unclear management. During the first month, explain the business priorities, your responsibilities, your important relationships, communication preferences, recurring work, decision boundaries, what counts as urgent, and where information is stored. Agree on what the EA should understand after 30 days, what they should own after 60, and whether they can operate with more independence after 90. Then keep the relationship healthy. Have regular priority reviews. Give useful feedback before frustration builds. Review the workload when the scope changes. Discuss development. Share 3 months in advance if possible your upcoming travels. And review the compensation when the responsibility materially increases. The EA should not have to earn basic respect by being permanently available. And growth doesn't always mean leaving executive support. It may mean handling more complex work, earning more authority, developing a specialization, or leaving other support professionals. Hiring gives you access to someone's time. A strong working relationship earns their judgment, commitment, and long-term trust. Before making the decision, score both the candidate and the opportunity. First, role match. Does the person's evidence match the responsibilities? Second, judgment. Can they handle incomplete information, risk, and trade-offs? Third, communication. Can they give clear context, recommendations, and updates? Fourth, Working arrangement. Are the schedule, compensation, and conditions sustainable? Fifth, security and continuity. Are both sides prepared to protect information and handle interruptions? And sixth, relationship fit. Can you provide the context, authority, feedback, and respect the EA needs? This is not only a candidate scorecard. Your role should be assessed too. Don't only ask whether the candidate is good enough for the opportunity. Ask whether the opportunity is good enough for the candidate you're looking for. Hiring a Filipino EA should not be treated as a shortcut to cheaper labor, and it should not be based on flattering assumptions about Filipino professionals. Define the role, assess the individual, compare communication and working styles, create sustainable hours, choose the right hiring arrangement, pay for the responsibility and outcome being carried, build secure remote systems, then invest in onboarding, feedback, and growth. The strongest global working relationships are not built by finding someone who will accept anything. They are built when both people understand the responsibility, respect the arrangement, and have a fair opportunity to do excellent work. If you're considering hiring a Filipino EA, which part of this process feel least clear? Defining the role, assessing the candidates, setting compensation, managing across time zones, or onboarding properly? Share your answer in the comments.